We're live.
Here we are.
I wanted to say it really fast right when we started this time.
You need to get some of those confetti poppers. We'll pop one of those every
That
time we go live.
That is an extraordinary idea, Micah.
Yeah.
But you can't have it too close to the beginning. It's we got to start the show so people think it's normal.
Right.
And then out of nowhere
comes oh my gosh, confetti.
Confetti, what's going on?
Anyways, hello everybody. Welcome to the Sustainability Happy Hour. That's what we call it for short. My name is Micah. I'm the communications specialist. Oh gosh. Oh man, we are not on the same wavelength. This is because I hit go. This is because I hit
go. So we tried this experiment last time where Micah would hit go and it was a little bit what are we going to say? And we did the same thing this time. Maybe we should just go back to the way it was before. I don't know. We're losing viewers. We're down to 1 trillion viewers now rather than our typical 2 trillion viewers.
Do you think that joke is getting old, or it's probably got a good few months left in it?
I don't know. I think it's funny still, but that's sort of the dad joke mentality where as long as the dad thinks it's funny, then it's still funny, but nobody else thinks it's funny.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we should do a fun fact, though, before we get started.
We might have some people that have never watched the show, so if you are watching for the first time, this is Sustainability Happy Hour. I'm Micah, and this is my co-host, Pat. And we work for the School of Global Environmental Sustainability. And this show is one of our ways that we are trying to engage more online while everyone's kind of in remote learning, lockdown, post-lockdown situations. But we really miss interacting with everybody. And so here we are. We go through some news headlines. We make some really bad dad jokes. And then we'll have a special guest later today. And we'll talk about some cool science.
There might be some good dad jokes, just saying.
I think that's kind of an oxymoron.
It is a total oxymoron. There's no such thing as a good dad joke. Okay, so sometimes we start out also by saying, hey, here's a fun fact.
Mm-hmm. Just so you can get to know us.
Just to get to know us a little.
Make it personal.
Right? Do you want to go first?
Well, you seem very prepared, so we better let you go before we forget.
I'm never prepared for the fun fact segment. And this time I have multiple fun facts. So our guest today is, just so that you stick around, because the guest is going to be the best part today. Mm-hmm. Dad jokes are not the best part. Our guest is Dr. Rebecca Gruby, and she does a lot of research on a lot of things, but among them is doing research in the Pacific, in communities in the Pacific. And while I have not been to the community that she works with, I have been to American Samoa, and I actually have some photographs of a much younger and much less handsome Pat when I was in American Samoa. So here's one of me playing bingo. Oh, you can't see that because the stupid ring light. Here we go.
I see. Oh yeah, there you are.
There's me playing bingo, super sweaty. And so bingo is super popular in Samoa. And so we would go, and I was the only person under, I don't know, the age of 30, 40, and also the only white guy who was not a local Samoan. And so, but it was super fun because it was a good way to practice your numbers. So I've got I was going down memory lane looking up pictures of me in Samoa, wearing a lava. There we go. Anyway.
I like that you have pictures printed out.
Yeah, this is super, I'm an old millennial. So this is an old millennial move where I still have photographs.
Yeah. Scrapbooks.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, this is this was my first digital camera, let alone a phone.
Ooh, yeah, a Nikon Coolpix.
Oh yeah, no, this was a big one. This was kind of a brick.
Nice.
Okay, anyway, your turn.
All right, so my fun fact, later on during the news rundown, we've got a fun story about mushrooms, about fungi. And so my fun fact is related to that. Well, it's related to mushrooms. When I was a child, I used to go foraging for morels with my dad all the time, which is really fun. If you've never eaten morels, they're delicious, especially when they're all
really hard, to
get good at mushroom
it can
foraging? Be, yes.
Okay.
And yeah, it can be kind of very physically taxing, but I would just go out for 20 minutes with my dad in my backyard. But anyways, so morels have sort of that honeycomb cell type of outer shell on it. And my dad told us when we were kids that little tiny gnomes lived inside each of one of those little nooks. and that you had to be really quiet while you were hunting for the morels, otherwise you would scare the gnomes. And also that they had a power to either make the mushrooms pop up or go back down. And they only let the mushrooms be visible to people they deemed worthy.
Wow.
So if you found mushrooms,
this feels like really Scandinavian almost.
Is this mean, my family's very Scandinavian. It might be.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like very kind of like deep forests of like Sweden and Norway.
Yeah. Yep. So I have a fondness for fungi.
Okay. And we will remember that when we get to the news.
Yeah. Speaking of the news, should we get on with it?
Let's do it.
All right. I have 4 stories for you today. We're going to go through them pretty quickly. The first 2 are a little depressing, and then the second 2 are less depressing because I like to end on a happy note.
As we should.
So our first article comes from, where does this article come from? It's from mid-July, so it's a little bit out of date, but it's still really interesting. The U.S. has already had $10 billion weather disasters this year. This makes 2020 the 6th consecutive year with at least 10 separate billion-dollar weather and climate disasters, which is a new record according to the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. All of them were due, and remember this is only going through mid-June. All of them were due to severe storms, which the NOAA said affected more than 30 states. And the most destructive so far was the outbreak from the 140 tornadoes from Texas to Maryland on April 12th and 13th that resulted in an estimated $3 billion in damages and caused 35 deaths. And then what's interesting in this article notes later, the wildfire season in the western U.S. and hurricane season are about to ramp up, which we have seen happen. So just a really interesting, it was from NBC News. Everyone talks about 2020 like has its own personality and that it's out to get us. And this kind of news certainly kind of makes you feel like that's true. But I read something on the internet the other day that was basically like, I'm not here for this whole anthropomorphization of 2020 because it's kind of like a cop-out. It's like this stuff isn't just happening because it's 2020. It's happening because we've spent centuries, exploiting the land and climate change, and this is happening with natural disasters.
I either read the same thing or something similar, which was essentially like the whole that's enough 2020 or
right. This stuff isn't going to magically go away on the first day of 2021.
No, and I mean, while I'm a big fan of those sorts of internet style jokes, I don't know, but I think it is sort of a cop out. I mean, it's sort of like giving up our complicity in all of this.
Yeah, and giving up our agency too.
Our agency, exactly, to do something more about it. And so I'm glad you brought that up.
Our next article comes from the University of Basel, which is a university in Switzerland.
Basel.
This one, Basel.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? This one actually was published today. Worldwide loss of phosphorus due to soil erosion quantified for the first time. Phosphorus is essential for agriculture. Sorry, there's my Wisconsin accent coming out. And yet this important plant nutrient is increasingly being lost from soils around the world, and the primary cause is soil erosion, is what this report found. The study was published in the journal Nature Communications, and it talks about which continents and regions are most strongly affected. So it was an international research team led by Professor Christina Ailwell, and she and her team investigated which continents and regions worldwide are suffering from the greatest loss of phosphorus. They combined high-resolution, spatially discrete global data on the phosphorus content of soils with local erosion rates, and based on that, they could calculate how much phosphorus is lost through erosion in different countries. And one important conclusion of the study is that it found that 50% of global phosphorus loss in agriculture is attributable to soil erosion, which is interesting because previously experts had reported that losses mainly came from lack of phosphorus recycling, food and feed waste, and general mismanagement. And those are certainly still sources, but this found that 50% was from soil erosion.
Yeah, and soil erosion, we're probably going to have a guest about soil erosion at some point in the near future, which doesn't sound like very splashy or important, but soil erosion is a huge problem in many ways because we're not making new dirt on timescales that we care about in terms of agriculture. And so the more soil that we erode, the harder it is going to be to produce the crops for the time frames that we want. And so this is a really big issue, but also the nutrients within the soil themselves and how we get more of those are a big kind of open question.
Yeah.
What's the next news article that we've got?
Yeah, the next one is, can planting trees make a city more equitable? This is about a nationwide pledge to a program called Trillion Trees Initiative, which is a global push to encourage reforestation and carbon capture and slow the effects of global heating. And if you go to this website, you can see all the different, it's a lot of like big corporations, like MasterCard is on there, and I think Microsoft, that have pledged to plant a certain number of trees by a certain date. And what is interesting and neat is that a lot of the US pledgers are pledging to plant in urban areas, specifically in disadvantaged communities, because it's been documented that, like, based on race and income, you can usually map out where you're going to have more heat islands and where there's going to be better urban tree cover. And so, different US corporations and cities are pledging to plant in those areas, which is really cool.
Yeah, that is a good thing. I know that there's also, recently there's been discussion about maintenance of those trees as well, like who is going to be responsible for taking care of those trees over the kind of longer term. And it will be, I hope that this sort of new initiative takes into consideration some of those other kind of long-standing issues about communities that maybe don't have the resources or for whatever reason aren't equipped to kind of maintain trees, pruning, taking care of them if they fall down, et cetera, that it doesn't lead to more additional or perpetuation of kind of these existing problems, especially related to race and income. But we should probably pivot right now to our guest. What do you think? No?
Well, we have to talk about the mushroom story. Okay,
of course we have to talk about it.
I'll be really fast.
Yeah, and I couldn't pull it up because Washington Post didn't want me to pull it up, but
that's all right.
That's all right.
The headline is called "When Fashion is Fungal," and that just really caught my eye. That's why I wanted to share this story. And it is talking about how mycelium, mycelium, is starting to show up in closets as a nature-based material for clothes, shoes, and bags. So there's this company that feeds this fungi called Ganoderma. It feeds it to coax it to grow into a dense, intertwined structure. Left alone, these little guys would normally make mushrooms, but by controlling the temperature, humidity, and other factors, it can instead produce sheets of fibers. And the resulting product they've branded reishi and can be treated and manufactured like leather. And I just think that's so cool, and I would totally wear mushrooms.
Right. I wonder if it would have, like, if it had some of the same properties as leather, that would be kind of a big game changer in terms of the kind of clothing industry. Because leather, I mean, people choose leather for all sorts of durability reasons and others. And so it'd be pretty cool if that was factored in. Okay, now are we good to...
Now we're good. We're going to post these articles in the description. So if you're like, what was she talking about? You can read more.
Totally. Or if you're just like, do you think that they make clothes out of fungus? Well, let me tell you. Without further ado, are you ready? Thumbs up. Boom. Okay. We would like to welcome Dr. Rebecca Gruby.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sustainability Happy Hour. You've kind of seen our antics so far, so you have a sense of what the show is like. The scholarly level is high, and so we must be prepared to act accordingly. Ken, maybe you could just do a brief introduction of kind of where you're at CSU, or what you're, the department and so forth.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Gruby, and I'm a social scientist based in the Department of Human Dimensions of Natural Resources. Boy, is that always a mouthful, at Colorado State University. And my research broadly focuses on issues of environmental governance, specifically in marine settings, which you might be surprised about since we are, in fact, in Colorado. But it is true. I focus mostly on marine governance and conservation issues, especially in the Pacific Islands.
And which Pacific Island in particular do you work on? Because you're focused on like a specific island, right?
Well, not really, although historically most of my work has been in the island of Palau, which is a independent small island nation / large ocean nation. We're reframing small island nations of about 20,000 people in the tropical Western Pacific. But also I'm currently working in Fiji, and I've also led projects in a number of other islands, including Kiribati, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and Guam, and Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, and Bermuda. So lots of different islands, not only in the Pacific, but mostly in the Pacific.
I had no idea your work was that geographically extensive. That's big.
Yeah, well, mostly in the context of our research on the human dimensions of large-scale marine protected areas. So we had 5 different study sites that we were working in, and I can talk more about that later. But currently, my research is really focused in Fiji and Palau on the role of philanthropy in marine conservation, specifically in the context of donor exits, as foundations are sort of drawing down their support and leaving these countries after many years of intensive investments there.
So I'm going to ask you a question on that, but before I say that, if you're just tuning in, this is the SoGES Sustainability Happy Hour. We're here with Dr. Rebecca Gruby from Colorado State University, and we're talking about, among other things, marine protected areas. And if you have questions, go ahead and post them in whatever platform you're using, and then we'll see them here, and we'll, if we've got the time, we'll go ahead and put those to Dr. Gruby. But maybe you could back up, because as residents of a landlocked state, maybe you could walk us through what a marine protected area is. I think we probably all have a hunch, but it might be good to get some kind of context.
Yeah, sure. So marine protected areas are similar to our protected areas on land, but they're just in the ocean or on the coast. And so they're spatial areas that are demarcated for conservation purposes, and they have a variety of different rule types that allow different levels of use, but most, have some level of restriction on human use, ranging all the way from no take, no enter, can't go anywhere inside of it, or all the way to sustainable use. So there's a wide range of MPA types, and they are the dominant tool for marine conservation globally. So they're a really important global conservation mechanism.
Are there, you said it's one of the types, like are there other types of conservation mechanisms that kind of you can compare it to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just traditional different types of fishing regulations or fishing restrictions that aren't spatially explicit. And then there are often within marine protected areas. In fact, the global definition of marine protected areas includes other area-based measures. And so it's important to know that within marine protected areas, they're both legal, kind of formal government protected marine protected areas, but also marine protected areas that are protected through other institutional mechanisms like customs and local level rules. And so even within marine protected areas, there's lots of different rule types. But on the other side, yes, there are lots of other types of marine conservation tools out there, including market-based mechanisms. So, similar to labels that we have for fair trade, we have those similar labels for sustainable seafood. So there's a huge range of conservation tools, but really, particularly in the sort of global level conservation world, marine protected areas are still the dominant conservation tool being used and funded and talked about.
Gotcha.
So you said something earlier on in terms of like it can range from like don't go in there, essentially, everybody don't go in there, to sustainable use. And so in thinking about, like, if I lived in one of these places, you know, and I was a fisher person, what would I mean, so is this something that even kind of communities like fishing communities think is like a good idea, or is there a lot of pushback, or kind of what's the range of response that you've seen as sort of an outsider looking into some of these things? I don't want to call you an outsider in like a disparaging way, but just like kind of.
I'm totally an outsider.
Okay.
I'm totally an outsider, and that's something I think about a lot in my work and recognize quite explicitly. But yeah, you put your finger on it. There's no, generalizable way to describe how local people engage with marine protected areas. It is super context specific. There are places that I've worked where the MPA, we'll use MPA because it's easier to say, marine protected area, has come from the community themselves. They have come up with this proposal. They came up with the rules to designate it. They manage it. They own it. And then, of course, there are some that have been designated in a more top-down fashion that have been actively, vehemently resisted and opposed. So it really ranges significantly. And I think it often, there's many reasons that that shape the way that people engage with marine protected areas, but we often see particularly contentious processes that are linked to more sort of top-down and exclusionary designation processes that don't have a level of participation and engagement for local communities or local people to provide input into how it should look and whether we should designate it. So that's where we tend to see more opposition, although you can get opposition even in a very participatory approach. So, like the refrain of social science is it's complex and it depends on context. And so I'll probably say that a lot.
That's fine. That's totally fine. I wanted to mention also, if you hear like chaos in the background, my 5-year-old is turning 6 today. And so it's exciting out there right now. And then my dog is in here, and so he wants to go play, but can't.
I thought you were referring to the squeals coming out from my.
Are there squeals happening on your side too?
Oh yeah, lots of them.
Oh, I didn't hear them. I can hear the chaos on my side. So
chaos everywhere.
Chaos everywhere. It's complex.
It's complex.
Okay, so actually, something you just said. The reason I went on my little trip to American Samoa, oh my gosh, how many years ago? Almost 20 years ago. Was to look at, in a very low-level way, I was an undergraduate, to explore conservation, because there's actually a national park for the United States in American Samoa. And they had passed laws about, I was looking at more terrestrial conservation. And I was there to sort of just like learn about it. And I found out, asking communities, doing just kind of informal interviews, that there was a huge section of one of the islands where the community itself had voted against joining the national park, but then that had never percolated up to the decision-making level. So now, as far as Congress is concerned, this huge chunk of the island is like not even like a sustainable use zone. It's like a no-go zone. But the community didn't vote for that. And so now I think people still use some of the things there as they needed, maybe informally. But it was striking to me that there can be those sorts of disconnections, and now it's like act of Congress, that's the national park. To change it would take another act of Congress in terms of the law. So is that sort of thing, I was shocked as like an undergrad conservation interested person, but is that sort of thing common, where there's this disconnect between maybe the interests or goals of a local community relative to, say, what the higher level decision-making powers that be, actually how they execute the plan?
Yeah, the short answer is yeah, it's more common than it should be, because social scientists for many years have been writing about the problems of doing conservation that way, right? Not only is it morally, ethically kind of wrong, but it also is like doesn't work very well, right? So I don't know anything about the protected area you're talking about, but I would be shocked if there was a high level of adherence to those rules, right? Where the community, they don't hold legitimacy in the community. So
yeah, my sense was that it didn't really.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, that's something social scientists have been writing about for a long time. But yeah, it still happens really more than it should.
I was wondering if I could pivot back to what you had talked about earlier. You said that a big chunk of your work right now is focused on the philanthropy and donors exiting those protected areas. So what happens when a donor exits, broadly?
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're trying to find out. So our new research on environmental philanthropy was motivated from a conversation I had with a program officer at the Packard Foundation a couple of years ago. He told me, hey, we're planning to exit our Western Pacific program. We're going to be leaving Palau, Fiji, and other countries they were working in. And so my first reaction was like, whoa, I wonder what that's going to mean for the marine conservation work you've supported. And I should just add, it's not just the marine protected areas. The Packard Foundation and other foundations have supported lots of different types of conservation work in the region. And his reaction was, we want to know the answer to that too. And so that's actually what motivated this project. There's very little research on environmental philanthropy in general. Almost no research on marine conservation philanthropy, and like zero research on exits in marine conservation philanthropy. So we're studying that exit process in real time to see how it's going. And then also a couple of years after the exit to then be able to ask what happens to the work that they had supported, but also why, so we want to understand the factors that contributed to basically the durability of the philanthropic supported marine conservation agenda in Palau and Fiji. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but
you're working on it.
In like, a year or two, I'll let you know.
Cool.
So I know that a part of your work involves kind of a lot of field work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so can you just like walk us through what that's like to do field work in some of these places, especially coming from like the middle of a continent?
Yeah. I feel incredibly lucky and fortunate that I've been able to do field work in a number of places around the world, but I'll focus specifically on Palau, which is a place I've been working for about 10 years now. So, ever since 2009, I think I've been to Palau at least once, maybe multiple times a year. And so have a long history of engagement there. Honestly, it feels like a second home to me. And I have a Palauan name, fun fact. It was given to me by a high chief in Palau who has since passed, but a good friend of mine. But my Palauan name is Dil Balau, and it means Lady of Palau, which is really an honor to have a name like that. So yeah, to do fieldwork in Palau is a deeply amazing experience and one I'm grateful for. And I always recognize my role as, a guest and an outsider, and try to approach my work with the respect for local views, local perspectives, local knowledge that it deserves. But it's been, the plane ride, if that's what you're referring to.
I wasn't.
From the middle of the US to Palau.
I was just referring to the whole operation, like the whole thing.
Yeah, man, it's a long plane ride.
Yeah, well, okay, so now that you're there talking about what does a route look like?
Usually fly somewhere in California, like San Francisco, then over to Honolulu, then to Guam, then to Palau. So it's 4 flights, usually like between 25 and 30 hours. And I've done that, fun fact, twice with newborn babies. So
No,
I
you
brought
haven't.
both of my girls to Palau for field work before their 4-month-old birthday. So that was quite a plane ride, but awesome to bring them to Palau.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like, okay, it's okay. No, nobody's watching except our, hundreds of millions of viewers. So, was it fun? Like,
yeah, Honestly, it was like, so the plane ride itself was like horrific.
Yeah. Okay. I don't even want to, let's not talk about that.
All right. But so I was really lucky that my mother came with me. And so she was a caregiver for the baby. And so I was able to do all the work that I wanted to do. And it was really cool to get to introduce my kids to people, like people in Palau who are, they feel like surrogate family. In fact, both my girls also have Palauan names.
No way.
Yeah. So no, it really was a wonderful experience. It was exhausting. I'm not going to lie. Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah,
for sure. But it was great. I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't change it.
Are you upset that they're not going to remember any of it? Like, it's like bringing a kid to Disney World when they're like, 3 years old.
Yeah, no kidding. My daughter is now 4.5, the older daughter, and she's been asking for me to take her to Palau. And as soon as we can travel again, that's definitely on my list. And in fact, another fun fact for all of you, Palau is one of the few nations in the world that has zero COVID because they closed their borders super early on in this whole thing. Wow. So no one's going to Palau right now, including me.
Especially
not even you.
No.
Well, so I mean, a cool thing I think about taking your family or having your family be a part of anything like that, it changes the way people interact with you in a kind of a big way, and not to like be more effective at science, right? But more like we're all people, and you're probably doing this research and in this job because you care about this stuff. Totally. And it's nice to be able to show like, yeah, I'm a person, I'm a human, and like, and you're a human, and we care about this stuff, and that's a way to sort of click into that aspect of those interactions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As a social scientist, I'm always asking people to share their views and their perspectives and experiences, and it feels really good when I can like reciprocate some of that. And so, bringing my 3-month-old to the remote fishing village that I worked in and introducing her to some of the fishermen who had engaged with our research over the years, it felt right. And they could get to know me as a person the way that I wanted to get to know them, and they had allowed me to get to know them. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a great experience. But it's not easy. And I have to say, like, there kudos to CSU for allowing me to use some of my startup funds to support dependent care travel. I think this was the first time they had ever allowed that to happen. And it was really the reason that I could do it. So institutional support is really important.
And being a trailblazer is important too. So good on you.
I'll take it.
So before we pivot to another question, we do have some questions from the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and ask them in sequence. We can post them up. We can be fancy. So Randall Barnes, what are the main expenditures in maintaining, not the initial cost of setting up, a marine protected area? What are the magnitudes of these expenditures? So like I think if I understand correctly, Randall, that the idea of maybe these big philanthropic organizations, and then like if that's not the question, in addition to Randall's question, how much money are these big philanthropic organizations maybe pouring into, say, Palau? And what does it look like in terms of actual money that's being withdrawn from some of those places? So just to add on.
Oh, we lost Pat.
We did lose Pat, but I can
answer. He'll find his way back. He'll find his way back.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And that's not something that I've spent a lot of time focusing on, but certainly, there are ongoing costs of, monitoring and enforcement are the big ones for MPAs, especially if you're interested in having a park that is not one just on paper. Those are really the biggest expenses, I would say. And in having capacity of staff that can manage that. So yeah, really good question. And there has been some recent work by David Gill at Duke University that shows that capacity is severely limited for actually implementing marine protected areas the way they need to be. So the need in terms of cost is actually not being met the way it needs to be. And that's actually a pretty big concern I have for the very large scale marine protected areas. So the recent trend in MPAs really since 2006 has been to declare massive MPAs. And they make up the lion's share of the global total of marine protected areas. And so they're really kind of an important new tool of marine conservation. And a big question that I have is the extent to which they'll be funded and supported in a way that they need to be to achieve their goals. And so that's a big question mark.
When you talk about when you were talking about capacity of the MPA, what do you mean by that?
So like capacity of staff that is trained in MPA management.
Gotcha.
Essentially, yeah.
Gotcha.
And also like the boats and the tools they need to actually monitor and enforce and implement it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, actually, I have a question. Is there a move to use like new forms of technology, like say drones or other things, to remotely monitor some of these like vast, extensive areas?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that's being extensively in the context of the large-scale marine protected areas. The Pew Charitable Trust has supported work on that called Eyes on the Seas. It's a project that they've been supporting. So yes, I mean, the short answer is yes, they're definitely exploring that. I don't know that drones, and I'm not an expert on this, but I don't know that drones have been proven either economically viable or effective yet for monitoring the vastness that are large MPAs. I heard once somebody describe drones as looking at the ocean through a straw. So, when you're talking about like EEZ wide level protection, it's still not where we need to be. But certainly satellite technology is getting there. And you were like pushing the bounds of my knowledge on this, so be careful.
Okay, this is going to be a test afterwards. So you just said EEZ. What's an EEZ?
Oh, okay, I can answer that for sure. The exclusive economic zone. So out to from shore to 200 nautical miles seaward, and that's basically the zone that countries control, individual countries control.
And they can do like
with the high seas where that's global commons.
Right. Okay, so we got one more question from the audience, and then we're going to switch a little bit, and then I got to let you go because I want to honor your time. So Ryan asked, how much do MPAs benefit the area that they are supposed to protect? Since animals and plants can move freely to and from these areas, do we see measurable improvements to the environment in the MPAs? And maybe just to add on to that, he actually has another question. Is the level of benefit directly related to the size of the MPA? So like are large MPAs actually seeing sort of the larger benefits?
Yeah, so there's an increasing body of research showing that MPAs do provide many important benefits to habitats, but also migratory species. And certainly the argument for very large MPAs is that they can protect more of those habitats, larger areas that encompass greater portions of the range of migratory species. And so, certainly larger. And the argument is also more protective, carry more benefits. So more restrictive, carry, and I should be clear, ecological benefits. So there's different types of benefits that we need to care about when it comes to MPAs. So as a social scientist, I need to point out, we don't only care about the ecological benefits. We also need to think a lot about the outcomes of MPAs for people, for communities, for livelihoods. And if you have super highly restrictive MPAs, that can also lead to negative social outcomes in terms of access to resources that communities may want and need. But there's a whole argument about spillover benefits that move from within the MPA to outside. So again, it's complicated, but the short answer is sure, MPAs are shown to have benefits, both social and ecological, but it really depends on how they're implemented and to whom you're asking whether it's beneficial or not.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of, beneficial for whom, to whom, under what context.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. We just got so many questions today. Let's see. So from Randy G, what lessons have you learned about MPA management in Palau that uniquely work best for specific circumstances of Palau? And what are those unique circumstances? Is that?
Yeah, so I just published a super fascinating paper with a number of colleagues in the journal Conservation Letters that looks at this super cool interaction between Palau's National Marine Sanctuary, that's their very large scale MPA, and a regional fisheries agreement in the Western Pacific region called the Nauru Agreement. And it's a very unique interaction. And we also look at how it interacts with the Kiribati, Phoenix Islands protected area, but I'll focus on Palau. But basically, the short of it is that we find that the way that these two policies interact supports in Palau the continued benefits from fishing revenue. And so basically, because Palau is able to sell their fishing rights to other countries that are part of that agreement, they can still close 80% of their ocean space to fishing and continue to sell fishing rights that are fished in other countries' ocean spaces. And so because of the way that those two policies interact, it supports Palau, at least in the sense of allowing them to maintain fisheries revenue as an important economic development revenue stream. So, I mean, there's more to say on that paper, but I'll stop there. That's one of the unique lessons that I think we can learn from Palau. And the broader lesson is that policy interactions matter a lot for large-scale MPAs, and we should be thinking about them all over the world.
Okay. And I just wanted to add that this is an open access paper, and so we'll make sure the link is in our notes so that if you want to go ahead and take a closer look at this, that you can go ahead and do that. Just being cognizant of time, I did want to ask one more question. Can we have 5 more minutes?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So it's cool that you brought up that you've brought both of your children on your field work, because you actually were, here's an article, sorry, I'm gesturing to it as though you can see it as well. There was a source article written recently, relatively recently, about something that you tweeted, right? Researchers tweet on balancing demands of academia with importance of family goes viral. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that was like.
Or do you not want to talk about it, actually?
No, it was like an out of body experience. It was so unexpected, you know. So I, as I got my tenure letter, I was reflecting on some advice that a colleague had given me years ago when I had just recently defended my PhD, and this person said, you know, don't have kids before tenure. And it kind of haunted me because having a family has always been important to me. And so when I got that tenure letter, I thought it was important to share with other people that it is not easy, but it is certainly possible to have a family and succeed in academia. And so I thought this would be like a quaint little post for, you know, at the time, I think I had like a couple hundred followers, but it really resonated because I think so many other people maybe have received that kind of advice. And it took off. It went viral and it was viewed more than 1 million times. And so my hope is that it made someone think twice about some bad advice that they might have received.
Yeah, completely. And the thing that I remember, because I saw you tweet it, like, you know, whenever it was, and I was like, that's awesome, you know, like, you know, the high five of it all. But then all of these people that I know from like completely different contexts, you know, like research communities in Sweden and whatever, they're like retweeting this thing. I was like, wait a second, like what? Yeah, like this is all over the place. I just thought it was so cool.
Thanks.
And I mean, more importantly though, I really liked the message that you're sending, which is that like times are really changing, and advice that people ought to be adhering to or thinking about, like they should be listening to this advice, right? You know? So the penultimate question is, if you could give advice to people that are interested in a job in academia, And if you could give advice that was like this, though not this advice, what kind of advice would you give?
I guess it sounds so cliche, but it's the thing that comes to mind because it's the thing that's true. It's just follow your passions. Honestly, like that's what's gotten me this far. I've never had this straight arrow to academia. As my undergraduates often ask me, how did you find your path, to where you are today? And I always explain that I kind of muddled through, but in muddling through, I was always following my passions and what I was interested in. And so I guess I would say, be true to that and follow your passions, and it'll hopefully take you where you need to be, recognizing there's a ton of institutional and structural barriers to that for many people. So, it sounds cliche, and in a way it is, because it's quite limited, and it worked for me as a particular type of person, right? And recognizing it worked for everybody, but maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And we can work on changing the rest.
Yeah, you can't necessarily be responsible for like all these structural limitations. It's bigger than the individual. So that's something that we all have to collectively change. But individually, I like that. I also know that you're an extraordinarily hard worker. And so follow your passions and work really hard. And
that's true.
Muddle through in the right direction.
Yeah.
I like that. Somebody should tweet that.
Well, you're the viral tweeter, so it might have to be you.
We're not going to be able to help you. We can only speak to our millions of viewers. We can't necessarily speak to the viral tweet community. Okay, so the last question, though, and I promise this is the last question. What is something, we've been doing this crazy lockdown thing for a long time. I was having a conversation with my 5-year-old yesterday, and he said, how long has the pandemic been going? And I said, gosh, I don't know. And he's like, 4 months. And I was like, longer. He's like, 5 months. And I was like, I think longer. And so we've been doing this totally curse word crazy thing for a long time. So what is something, though, that's happened during this crazy time that has been like positive, maybe unexpected? Doesn't have to be related to work. But like, what's a good, cool thing? It can be small. Like, what's some happy thing that's happened for you, or,
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good question. And for me, the answer is pretty easy, and it's personal. It comes down to having my girls be able to get to know one another. They're 4 and 1. And if this hadn't happened, they would be in separate classrooms at a daycare all day. And instead, they've spent a ton of time together, and I've spent more time with them. Mm-hmm. So for that, I'm really grateful, and, mostly staying somewhat sane. But yeah, no, that has been a really beautiful thing. And the teaching online, so I'm teaching all of my classes online, and honestly, it's going better than I expected so far. And I'm finding students are really able to adapt and engage. I'm teaching in a synchronous way. I'm basically moving my whole classroom-based class online in the exact same way I would have taught it in person. And I'm finding it's possible to do that in an online setting. So that's a bright spot for me, because I love teaching, and it's nice to be able to continue to connect with my students, even though I'm not breathing their germs. Love you guys.
Okay, well, those are two really good things.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much for making the time to join us today. This was a fantastic, fun interview to have.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. Great show, great hosts.
Yeah, thanks for widening down your week with us. Okay,
well, I'm going to go ahead and click you out of here.
Any final words?
Not really. Be well, everyone. Thanks for watching. Reach out if you have any questions. Always happy to engage.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay. So we're running a little bit long. Just a touch.
Do we have any SoGES announcements? I had some, and then I closed the tab that I had them on.
I've got one. I don't have it necessarily pulled. Let's see if I can pull it up. Boom, boom, boom. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it up. We have a seminar in, what is that, 2 weeks?
That's what it was. Yes, September 22nd. September 22nd, we are having our first virtual lecture of the semester.
Yes.
We're going to have Dr. Mary C. Hill. She's a SoGES visiting fellow right now and comes to us from the University of Kansas. And she's going to be talking about futures, F-E-W, futures, as in
Wait,
food.
what? That's not how you spell that.
I know, right? It stands for the food, energy, water nexus, I think.
It does. It does. Sorry.
Yes.
Jim,
so it's
I'm trying to pull up a link in like a panicked way right now, and I can't.
That's all right. It's on the website. We'll post the link. You'll find it. So it's going to be a really interesting talk. So make sure it's free to attend, but you just have to register to get the link. So make sure you head on over to our website and do that.
Hold on. Did it.
There it is. There it is.
Here it is. Okay, sign up. Yeah, you do have to register so that you can be kind of logged in behind whatever firewall.
Mm-hmm.
And so just go to the SoGES website. You can find it there. If you can't find it, send a message to us on Twitter or whatever.
Yep.
But it should be a really cool talk. Do we have anything else? I don't think we have anything else.
I think that's all I got.
We do actually have something else. Holy cow. We actually know who the next guest is going to be, right?
Oh, yeah, we do.
This is like sustainability happy hour first. We actually have a plan, believe it or not.
Our next episode is going to be on September 25th. That is also a Friday, and it is also going to be at 3 p.m.
Yep.
And our guest is going to be Christopher O'Connor. He is a research ecologist with the USDA Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station. And his research interests include fire ecology and fire management. And so we are hoping to have a really good discussion with him that will probably tie at least a little bit to the wildfires that we're experiencing here in Colorado. So tune in for that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is this the right Christopher D. O'Connor?
That's the guy.
Boom. Yeah, this should be really interesting. We really want to have a conversation soon with some folks that actually understand what's happening with all these fires and to kind of speak to that a bit more so that we can understand, like, put this whole experience into context. Sometimes it's hard to make sense of an ongoing, which seems like a really significant escalation in terms of the extent of fires, et cetera. And so it's important that we can kind of put that into context a little bit.
Yep.
So we're excited to have him on the show in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
tune into that. And then shortly before that, we're going to have our guest lecture, right?
Yep.
Boom. Okay. Lots of stuff happening.
All sorts of things. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This has been the Sustainability Happy Hour from the School of Global Environmental Sustainability.
And if you want to sign up for our to get updates about when this is going to happen, I promise we won't spam you. We're just going to let you know when we actually have a show.
Mm-hmm.
You can sign up for the email newsletter, or not a newsletter, just the email list. Yep. And we'll make sure that you get notified.
Yep. And we'll put that link in the description of this broadcast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Micah.
Yeah. Thanks you, Pat.